shoot. Okay, everybody, we're back in here, and it's not just the Club with Lucas today, because I'm not alone. Come on, children of the corn, talk to me.
Bon dia.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Welcome everybody, because this is a late intro to something that's actually happening right now. This is happening, you guys.
It's happening.
It's doing it like we're fucking Jana. I don't
We're
know.
doing
We're
it.
taking wing with Queen Kelli Ellis, Lady Spencer Moore, and Duke Luke Abram. Everybody now. Oh, look at it. It doesn't show up so much on the screen. What am I talking about? We're talking about all the orange juice that Lucas just spilled. But that's just an intro and explanation, because this is a creative cast by 3 creative runaways to Barcelona from the U.S. You know, shit was popping off, so we had to get out. Where monthly, we want to take a look at some of the pleasantries, as this is what I'm calling them. The pleasantries, the crazed truth, and the funkiest funks that besiege us all. It's 11:11, make a wish. But through a lens filtered through a croissant cava, maybe not today, and an expat immigrant point of view. For all you Planet Janet, let's talk about this, because I'm not just doing the Club with Lucas today, which is my offshoot. Shout out RCE 106.9 from Barcelona. But ladies, why are we doing this? Let's talk.
I'm so excited we're finally doing this.
I mean, we're actually doing this, but it's on the hinges of goodness. Okay, really quickly, since it's episode 1, what the F? All right, we're talking about some real stuff that affects us all as immigrants, and expats, when we got here. And Lucas threw with the cord. It wasn't my fault. It was the cord's fault. I will always blame the cord, which incidentally is the name of a boy in the United States. But I threw orange juice all over this beautiful table. And so this is why we've come on a bit late, but it's great. Now, let's talk about this expat Royal Society thing. Where did this come about, and what brought us here in the first place to B to the C to the N?
Well, I think it started with some brunches, right? And
Lots
they're
of
pretty
brunches.
Thank you,
ridiculous.
Spencer.
Yes.
Because you were the conduit. The Lord used Spencer to like bring us together.
Of course, our names. So she's Lady Spencer, Luke the Duke.
Luke the Duke.
Queen Kelli, obviously we're royal, so.
And Kelly and K are spelled with Queen with K's.
Yes.
We won't add an extra K, just so you know. We're keeping it legit here. We're keeping it legit.
That's right.
We're not the Kardashians.
Okay.
No, we're not. But we do talk a lot.
I'm all over that with a bag of chips.
Look.
Because, okay, so let's just start off, shall we?
Yeah.
All right, so growing up, I went to this very lovely, quasi-exclusive Christian school growing up. It was Southern Baptist and very well certified. And my parents were very proud to send the kids there. And the principal of the school, her last name was Krenek, Krenek. And she had 2 daughters. And she named them Crystal and Candace with K's. And her husband's family were like clan, heads of clan there.
Oh, no.
And it was all, even their realty establishment was called Rockin' K. I won't say which city, but if you do the research.
Wow.
Wow. And now you know. And my mother had to withdraw us from that school after some drama happened. I never got that ginger beer. It's okay. I've got water, guys.
you want some of
I don't need you. No, it's okay now.
Let's not share the quiz on the table. We've been there,
No,
done that.
exactly.
Yeah, because Lucas has a tendency too. But tendencies are like fun, you guys. And so we eventually got kicked out after 12 years going there. You know, we went from there from the time we were in Pampers beyond, you know. So, and I don't know why I'm going over there, but it's part of the reason why I left the United States in the first place. Hey.
Cheers.
When did we all leave, by the way? Because I've been gone since 2009. When Obama came in, I left, which was odd because those were probably better years than the years before or after.
What? You've been here second.
I came in 2016.
In 2019 for me.
2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm close to a decade.
rock on. I guess I feel like the old timer here. I'll
You
tell you what. Well, what brought us here? Mine was family was here. Mine was dog could come. I'm sure that helped for you too.
Oh, yeah.
You had to bring the babies.
Yeah, I had to bring my dogs.
And I had I was involved in a toxic relationship
Oh, that's nice.
with someone that I'm slamming still from time to time. I'm going to keep it real.
So you're saying you ended that and then moved
A
here?
decade and a half
ran
ago.
away and
No,
then
no.
you-
I ended it here. By 2009-10, it was done. And then I don't know what's happened.
There's just
We won't name names because names don't need to be named. But again, I remind everybody that this is We're going to get to the club with Lucas in a little bit. But today, you're joining us here with the Royal Expat Society. Right. Lady Spencer Moore, Queen Kelli Ellis.
This is what we do at brunch. So we just thought, why not just take it and just share all of our ridiculousness? I mean, because we really are, and it doesn't stop. And people sit around us and go, they haven't stopped talking for like 3 hours, and that
We
happens
dominate
a lot,
the
yeah.
restaurant.
But I don't think we scream over, sometimes there are a lot of people that want to scream so that everybody hears what their conversation
Oh,
is.
Americans? You mean?
Child.
I think that's called an American in Europe. I think that's what.
In the name of Jesus.
I'm just saying, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
It is this thing, but also
embarrassing.
another thing, and maybe this is one of the non-benefits of being from the States. I don't know if our UK brothers and sisters feel this way. I know some of them do because I have so many friends who do. But when you are, in a way, escaping from, I was kind of escaping the Bush administration. I was done. Yeah, actually, that was a big part and parcel of it, to be honest with you.
Really? I had family here. I had a daughter here, and it was just a place that I always loved. And then you go, can I live there? I'm just
never
gonna do
thought I
it.
could
And
do
you can.
And you can.
And you can. You can do it.
You just go.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody stop you.
Don't.
Are there benefits to being U.S. American in Europe? Ooh. I felt really hated when I got here because it was right off the Bush administration, and Europe was like, screw you guys, I'm going home,
Yeah.
So,
I'm struggling to find a benefit.
I mean, I taught English when I first came
There you
here,
go.
and that was
I
was
still
like
tutor with
I
Cambridge
was
English, yeah.
sought out for my American accent because people wanted to learn with an American accent.
Well, the whole Brexit thing was happening
That's
as
interesting.
well, and so there was this cut off, and I remember actually not being English or Irish worked against me when I was doing because I was doing a lot of my enrollment to try to get legal during as Rajoy was coming in the Pepe. And
Nobody knows what that is, kids.
well,
No, they
okay,
don't.
let's talk. Okay, this is true. Thank you.
Because I'm one of them. I have no idea what you're talking about.
I was the ex-president of Spain.
Oh, there you go. See?
That was the Bush time of not comparing them. but-
Constantly learning.
Nope, not today.
I said what? And so Rajoy was the leader of the Pepe, and he took over in 2011 after 2011, and that's when I fully started my process, and I kept getting rejected. And the thing was, why do we need a U.S. American educator or historian or anything when we can get an Englishman or an Irishman who's European already? And then Brexit.
Right.
Incidentally, Birmingham is bankrupt as I'm speaking to you right now.
Oh, I think we're going to see more of that.
It's fun. So, okay, let's talk about this because once you already made the move and you've jumped and you've sown your seeds or whatever, right? Yeah.
Isn't that what men? Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
It's what we do. Yeah, we do that, but we don't do the zoo all the time.
That's
I'm just
right.
saying.
That's right.
We keep it in our pants because the Lord taught us well. But when you've assimilated already, and then friends and family come over, what's walking? First time or not? I mean, the first time my father came over, you guys, you girls, he asked me, Mijito, do I need to bring soluble water tablets? Dad, it's true. And I said, Dad, we don't live in Eastern Europe.
Oh, my God.
No, that's a line from AbFab, if you know what I'm talking about. Shout out. But, they roll into and they disturb your flow.
Yep.
So how do you deal with it, and what advice would you give to people who are dealing with that in situations when we throw this out into Al Gore's interwebs? Because, sometimes it's high maintenance. And I threw there on our joking list of minutes, I mean, besides copious amounts, pinche autocorrect, besides copious amounts of Xanax and Ambien.
I think Kelli can speak to that very well right now.
I
because
can.
14 visitors at the
I
moment.
yes.
Beautiful.
14 visitors strolling in. Now, some have been here before, so they know what to expect, and they're cool. And they didn't go like typical Americans. They were kind of assimilated, a.k.a. learn to not walk around in their, I don't know, kitten heels on cobblestone streets or those kinds of things. But I still get the,
You like Courtney Stodden?
oh my gosh, you don't have a dryer? You hang your clothes? What's this? Why would you do this? What? I mean, for those questions. Oh, there's a different plugs? I mean, really, all the way down to that.
No, they didn't realize.
Young children in the group. Yeah, did not realize. I mean,
Is that
everything
one of the things
could
that they kind of tell you when you're getting your first year rail pass and you're trying,
One of them didn't have
There's no education about
he didn't have a
coming to Europe.
passport. It was his first time.
You just figure it out.
First time leaving the country. So he had no clue. But all of those things you have to kind of explain. Does everybody walk here? Do you have a car?
Speaking of walking, when my
Yeah.
parents came, when my parents were here together for the first time, I remember taking them through the city, and they were like snails walking down the street. And I am a get to from point A to point B, like let's just go.
Yeah.
And these poor people, I was like, come on, let's go. And it was like we ran by Casaballo because it was like, come on, let's go. But they want to see everything,
Yeah.
and I forget that experience of
Exactly.
coming here for the first time.
Yeah.
And for them, it was like, oh my gosh, the buildings and the architecture and the streets and the cut corners. And for me, it's
That's
like,
so cute,
let's go. We got a
too.
reservation. We got to get there on time.
But is that also because of your sign?
I think, well, I mean, I'm an Aries and I am like, I'm the bull. Let's go. Fire
Yes,
sign.
she is.
And I just, so for me, it's patience. It's remembering that they're coming here for the first
It's true.
time. And you just kind of need to get into that mentality that, not that I ever take the city for granted because I'm amazed by the city every day. But I have to kind of get my head wrapped around like, okay, we got a first time visitor. We got to walk slow. We got to, go get the coffee from not Starbucks, but from the cafe, or the cafeteria. Let's get some croissants and some paella and do the
Right.
touristy stuff.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
So I feel like when people come to your city, especially for those expat immigrants who are listening, you discover the city again or new things about it when you're showing it around.
That's true.
To other people.
That's true.
And
That's
so
true.
then it becomes new to you. I also love it in holidays when people leave. I remember this back in the city too, back in New York. And July 4th, everybody would get that out, usually to the Hamptons, Long Island. And the city was so quiet. And it was, you had it to yourself and everything was open because, it's the city that never sleeps. That's when you put the Mexicans to work at the stores. No. I'm a Mexican, I can say that. But it feels like you have the city to yourself and you discover it when they come and they
Yeah,
show up. And
totally.
my father has just recently moved in. He comes in and out. He's kind of like Amy Grant or Madonna. They just float in and out of your life like wholesome beings. And he's here now, thanks Lucas's heart. And when we're doing things, I realize that I'm seeing new
things.
I ruined his El Camino Daddy. I love you.
But there's so much to do in this city, and I think I said that about 14 times last night. We were out. Had a little too much to drink. I'm drinking ginger today.
This is ginger beer. This is kava.
and I got my coffee mug that I use
Yeah.
every
Shout
morning.
out to our UK brothers and sisters as well, because as this is an English-focused thing, it really does often deal with people from the Five Eye countries.
Right.
And, so shout out to all our people from the Five Eye countries and all our listeners who are practicing their English. It is very, very important. We can't help it. We're
yes.
just U.S. Americans. We want to help the world. That's why we're here.
I find myself being quite embarrassed by being with my friends. I'm not gonna lie, because they're so
So
loud.
bloody loud.
They're so loud. They got kicked out of 3 bars.
There you go.
I wasn't
Yeah.
with them, thank goodness. But yeah,
But this is one of the advice we would give them. Okay, so
please don't.
keep it chill, keep it real. Because remember, as they used to tell me at that school when we were little, you may be the only Bible, Quran, Torah, that anyone ever sees. So
Okay, I mean,
you're representing. Did they ever tell you that?
you're representing.
Oh,
You're
the,
right,
oh,
yes.
what-
You're
No,
representing
yes, the
the family too. Oh, my
family,
parents.
Always.
Come on.
Yes, yes.
You are representing the family.
I think advice I would give people that come also is don't come in August. Because the Americans think,
true.
let's go in August. It's right before school starts. It's the end of the summer. I mean, let's talk about the heat, the
Exactly.
humidity. It is a
Exactly.
thing here.
It is a thing here, and that is true. And I think for anybody a lot of people from the U.S., in fact, Barcelona this year again is going to take the cake as the most visited city, I believe,
Nice.
in the world. I think, or is it Europe? I think
Oh,
it's the
man, I don't
world.
know.
And if you can come at the beginning or like the 5th through the 14th of September, that's a better time to
September,
come.
October, yeah.
August is really between 95 and 110 and between 70 and 90% humidity. It's fun. And Iberia is like that as well. But I will say this year it was hotter in Italy and France than here.
Yeah.
I also find that middle to end of July is normally hotter than August. Sometimes it kind of starts peaking beginning of August and goes down. But those summer months are hard for people when they come here. It's so hot and they're not used to this.
We're having a bit of an indigenous people summer right now. I caught myself because it's kind of turned.
So funny.
I caught myself, and I'm gonna keep it real, and because it's continued.
Yeah.
It was 30-something degrees the last few days.
I know. And is it always this hot here? Is it so humid here? Why? Where's the service in the restaurant? Can we get some water? Is there ice? I mean, all the
Do they bake chips?
Yeah. Oh, it's just.
Well, the free water, that bothers people because in the States, you always get water when you sit down. They bring you bread and water, and here you have to ask for it and pay for it.
Right.
And ice is not a thing.
Right.
Well, and also for our listeners later on in the hoops, we're recording this in October, late October of which year? I'm gonna let you guess. And but ice is not necessarily a thing always, and water is more expensive than beer here, and often depending if where you're at, than a glass of wine even if you're at a
Maybe
cheap.
that's why I had no water yesterday. I just drank. That's what
the
happened
culture's
last
fault.
night. That's
You're
what,
hungover
that's what
because of
happened.
the culture.
We're gonna blame the
That's what
culture. You have to blame the fucking culture, y'all. Speaking of culture, medical culture. When doctors make mistakes, okay, when you come here, you have to realize that you may have to do a little bit of fun bureaucracy, but you get free medical health care when you come to most places in Europe. And it took me a while. Honestly, the only reason they denied me the first few times. And I remember her pulling out
Manual?
notebook, like a trapper keeper, and and she showed me the countries that they wouldn't.
Really?
And the last one, and I'm not kidding you, it was liquid papered out, and on top of it, someone had written, comma, Estados Unidos de America.
Wow.
It was gangsta like that in Dresanes.
Did she turn around and write something in the notebook before she
No,
showed
but
it to
she
you? Because
was-
maybe she wrote it while you were there.
She was un poco hippie, you know what I mean? So hippie would be the posh hippies, those hippies in university, you just want to slug them. Then they call mom and dad, Mom, I need 3,000.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But they can't take a shower. But she took a shower. The sister was, I'm just saying. Dresanes, check yourself before you wreck yourself. We're recording this in Barcelona, everybody. And it was the third try when somebody saw that I was from New York City, and she said, oh, my dream is to escape here for the summer. No kids. She made that a point. And to spend a summer in New York learning English.
Oh.
And it's being there with the people.
Okay.
Not a bit. And
My
she
husband
said,
did that. That's how he really refined his English. He went to New York for a couple months.
This woman, and she said, she pulled out the same binder. I remember she was looking at things, looking at my passport, looking at my documentation in New York City.
And she wrote, "Except Lucas."
I mean,
Except this
and
man.
it was ching,
With his
ching,
photo.
ching, ching. And my dog had just died. It sounds like a country song. We're going to get to that later, too. My dog had just died, and my mother was in detox. It's fun. The U.S. is fun. And detox can be fun, depending on where you go.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't know. But then you get your doctor. Mine was fine. I could never let my father meet her because it'd be like on a bag of white on rice, as we say. But she was an amazing doctor. And I didn't feel, sometimes guys prefer male doctors for certain reasons.
Yeah. She was good.
She was
I have some good
badass.
doctors here too.
Badass.
I
Shout
found a
out,
great-
Senora Rodrigo Munet.
Service here, healthcare and service. But I have free healthcare because I'm a resident. And so I'm enrolled into the
Exactly.
security, the social
What's your temp resident, which would take some time when you're a
That's
U.S.
me.
citizen, Canadian?
I'm still temp, and I have private insurance, but I mean, when
You
you say
can get cat salute.
I have it.
Okay.
I do have
But
it.
I also have
don't
private
use it.
insurance because how much do we pay for private insurance on a monthly basis here, Children of the Corn,
I pay.
in Europe?
I think I pay €60 a month.
Thank you, me
I
too.
pay 140, but that's because I had a hip replacement. So,
Oh, my sister.
And it was fantastic.
and it was freaking
Fantastic.
tastic.
And how much was that hip replacement? Because they are 20,000, depending more and more.
Oh, way more.
Wherever you're coming from.
Way more, but I pay no deductibles, no copay.
This is all I'm saying.
No.
But this doesn't just, I think for people that come as tourists.
Yes.
I mean, you're not just going to come here and then.
No,
you
no,
know.
no.
And the other
True.
thing is
Let's keep
that
it real. Yes.
You can't.
Thank
these
you
are
for
for
saying that.
residents. And
That's
the other
right.
thing is when we go, like when I go to the emergency room, it's a substantial wait. I mean, in the States it is as well. But I find that the healthcare is a different experience here.
It is.
I mean, I went to the doctor here for a sinus infection, and the first thing he said was, "Do you sleep with your windows open?" I don't know, does that matter? And he was like, you need air, you need a current, that'll clear up your sinus infection. And I was like, I just really want an antibiotic. Can you just give
I'm
me
American.
some
Could you give me some drugs?
amoxicillin? And he was like, well, let's just try, water. Let's try sleeping with your window open and come back to me in a couple of days. I was like, I'm going to be on the floor dead in a couple of days. Give me my antibiotic. I'm American. So it's a whole system here. It's a lot of Eastern, Western. It's a lot of and antibiotics here are not used like they are in the States.
No.
It's a different culture of medicine that you kind of have to.
Although I had a
ease
doctor,
into.
I had a doctor yesterday, so I went to have a dermatology appointment, right? And this doctor, I sought him out because he had U.S. education.
And he spoke English.
He spoke English. That was
There
a
we
big
go.
deal. Yeah, he spoke English. So I mean, my Spanish is, hablan poquito. See? Poquito. But he was so great. The first thing he told me when I started talking to him was, I love the American culture. I just love Westerns. I've really studied everything about it. And he just went on and on how much he loves the States, loves everything. But he was also, he was 100% knowledgeable. He had different ideas, alternative ideas to where I thought I was going to have something cut to remove it. And he's like, no, we're going to do something more conservative and nothing anybody's said before. So I really appreciate the level, too, of expertise that I've run into here. Really incredible. And especially when my private insurance is next to nothing.
Well,
It's insane.
Medical here, the technology and the advancements they have here in Barcelona and in Spain
Specific.
is very good.
It's the top in the world.
It's one of the tops in the
Valley-d'Hebron
world.
and
great.
Hospital Clinique.
Exactly.
Come on.
Technon is an amazing
And
hospital.
it's right down the street and around the corner from where I live. It's
And
wonderful.
It's beautiful. It's like a
Yeah.
tourist attraction.
It
If you go to
is.
the Hospital Technon, it's beautiful.
Just
up
go over there, take some weed
Say
with
hi.
you, have a picnic, you know how to roll. But then there are the things that are odd. Because like I said, Daddy, I'm sorry I ruined your Camino, but you're going right back. But I had a little issue that had to get checked out last week. This week was the dog, last week was me. It's a love thing.
So fun.
It's fun. And they were giving me some treatment, and then they come in for more treatment. I said, what is that? And they're going to give me this liquid metamizole, this Nolatil.
No.
No,
And I
Nolatil.
said,
It's
I
an-
remembered this from when I'd had
Nope,
some
not
stuff.
today.
And he said, no. I said, no. In fact, I said,
I'll rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
is what I said. And I said, you get that shit away from me. I'm going to cut it off. And I'm not talking about that cord, honey. No, I'm kidding. And he said, yeah, okay, no problem. And he just walked out. The minute I said no, he said, okay, no problem, and walked out. Obviously, cut
But
the
if
line.
you didn't know what it was.
So can we please talk about this? Because there is
Yes.
something real that Lady S, you
Yeah.
mentioned to us the other day at brunch, and I was, I'd be all like, what? And I'm all like, and then I go,
So I think it's always interesting when you travel to other countries because the medicine is different, and if you don't bring your own medicine, which is like bringing a suitcase full of stuff. So Nolatil here, for me at least, because I'm always sick. So Nolatil here is the #1 prescribed analgesic pain. It's a pain medicine.
oh yeah,
And-
analgesic up that ass.
Anesthesico. I sometimes I lose my English words now, and I can only speak in Spanish.
It costs
Anesthesico.
English.
Oh, it's a problem. She can only speak in Spanish, you guys. It's just been
I don't know if you
here.
know that.
So it's a pain medicine. It's a #1 pain medicine that's prescribed here. And the problem is that in some people, genetic backgrounds,
Northern
like
Europe.
UK, Northern Europe, for example, it's banned in the UK, is because it has a propensity
Yeah.
to cause sepsis. It's this big long word that I don't remember that starts with A, but it causes some problem in the body that will lead to sepsis. And that is a rapid
Terrible.
decline
And there have
in
been many
health.
deaths here.
And
Deaths.
sepsis is very scary because a lot of people don't know the symptoms are quite vague, and then all of a sudden
I'm
they're
feeling
gone
like
too
I'm
far.
getting them. I'm getting the symptoms right now.
Would you please stop? Oh, really?
No, I'm kidding.
Do you need to eat something?
Funny. No, thanks so much.
We have croissants.
We mentioned I'm hungover. Okay.
We
But
also
yeah.
have coffee sitting over there, which I'm not going to lie. I'm looking at it. It's kind of making my nipples hard, but
Well,
whatever.
coffee
Lots of
does
things
that.
make my nipples hard.
Coffee does that.
But also, Mamacita, you mentioned something also at brunch the other day.
Yeah.
And it required a carajillo with Bailey's, which is a coffee with Bailey's for my U.S. or for my my country listeners. But codeine is from morphine, and I never knew that. And my whole life I've been allergic to it, and immediate vomits come. And I never knew this, and this is an explanation, which might mean I can't have morphine, but I can have my THC. God, I need to get some Botox right here. I can just see it looking at the YouTube. And a shout out YouTube. Thank you, lighting at RCE 106.9. Hey guys, tell us how you learned this, please. I'm so effing interested.
She's a
So I'm allergic to
encyclopedia.
morphine. And
See?
actually, all the doctors would say you can't be allergic to morphine, or it's not a real allergy. It's an intolerance. Don't you love that with food?
Yeah,
It's
that's
an
fine.
intolerance.
What
It's
the
not an
hell?
allergy.
Watch
I mean,
my
is that
body.
anything more American? It's
Yes,
like, what is this an
serious.
intolerance?
Watch me turn green. This isn't intolerance. I
So-
don't know what's going on.
Right. So I actually went and got allergy test. I needed to get allergy tested, and I told the doctor I actually think I have an allergy to morphine. They said no puede ser, it can't be. But they tested me anyways, and I came back positive. And the doctor said he wrote. I said, could you please write these down
Yeah.
for me to
I
take
need
to other
proof.
doctors?
I need
And
proof.
in it he wrote, she's allergic to morphine, but if she really needs it, don't worry, you can give it to her.
Oh my
And he was like,
gosh.
no, that does not sound good.
Wow.
That's what it says. But
Oh, my
I think an
nerves.
allergy to morphine is quite rare. But I get very severe water retention where it goes in my lungs.
Well,
and
what
it's-
happened the
it's a
other
quite-
night? Tell the good
codeine.
people, y'all.
So the other day, I had a procedure. I needed some pain medicine afterwards, and I was given Tylenol with codeine, paracetamol with codeine. And I took it not realizing that the codeine was a morphine derivative.
I wouldn't know.
Oh my
And
goodness,
I
girl.
woke up in the middle of the night with fingers like King Charles, you know, these little sausages.
Ah!
I'm sorry.
Girl, keep
I'm
it real.
sorry.
What the hell was that?
Royal expats.
Exactly. Just saying, but they look like Vienna sausages. They really do. That's messed up. But madam, please, ladies, next time.
And yeah, I started having some severe water retention, and I stopped it. Last time I've had it happen in the past, and I needed to have a bigger medical intervention. This time it was quite small, so that was great. But it's just important to know what doctors give you and what's in it. For me, Google is my best friend. I'm the person that Googles everything. I can't help it.
Well, can I just talk about a weird thing that happened? I went to the doctor, and so I've got all kinds of problems. I really sound like a real problem.
I sound
I was like, I really
Listen,
like hips,
Excuse
the
me. When
nose.
you're 39, you have to realize some things.
Very funny.
It's
53 over
true. Uh,
here. 53. Big rock star
Okay.
53. Okay, so I go to the doctor, and I've got this. I walk in with this shoulder that I can't even put my bra on. I can't hardly wash my hair. It's ridiculous, right? And it hurts. Just all of a sudden, 2 months. For 2 months, it's hurt. And I walk in. The first thing he says to me is, "Well, do you have a sore throat? Did you have a sore throat?" And I was like, "What does that have to do?"
Do you sleep with your window open?
Shoulder. Yeah, exactly. What does that have to do with my shoulder? And he's like, "Oh, that's a COVID thing. We're finding a correlation between the shoulder and the sore throat."
Long COVID.
Weird. So frozen shoulder is what it has. Then I learned
heart's
from
not open.
no, yes, heart's not. That's what happens. I learned from a couple of my friends from the States. They said that it's a symptom of menopause.
Welcome
But
to
you're only
menopause.
39.
What? 53. Can you menopause? Frozen shoulders in menopause? And they did say frozen shoulders tend to be like with women, mostly women get them, and they don't know why. But why did we not then put 2 and 2 together with hormones? Hi, can we have some study?
But AFAB said that in LA they didn't believe in menopause.
Okay.
Oh, we don't get the menopause in LA. We don't believe in it.
Hilarious.
Ay, chingo. Okay, and then the other things that happen when you are, and I think when you're in an expat, and when you are in an expat, yeah, when you're in sudden expat.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. The devil makes me
not
say,
today.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Again, the devil, absolutely
I
not.
rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
And so this, when you look at things from a different point of view because you've been outside, and we heard of the typical Delta Airlines flight from BC into Atlanta, which my sister and I have flown many times.
It's on the East Coast.
I'm gonna say when you've been gone for a while and you get back into the States, the splay of girth in front of your eyes is scary. I'm gonna keep it real.
What?
What
Okay.
girth?
The amount of chunkiness around when you arrive.
You're talking the population in
You
general.
get to LA, that's a whole different story.
Got it. That's
That's a
true.
whole different story when you just fly to LA.
Sort of not though.
But to get to New York, usually you have to fly. Well, no, that's not true now. But before, you really went to Atlanta and then went up.
Yeah.
It was weird. Or you went to Canada and then over. And so I just remember when the first time I'd been gone for years and then went back. Anyway, so
Speaking on this, I was reading that
73% is a statistic now. I'm just saying.
Speaking on this term, excuse me, I was reading that airlines are really excited about Ozempic because people are going to lose weight and it's better for
Stop.
fuel. It's better for their
It has to
their
be.
fuel.
Lady Spencer
and
works for MSN. Pay attention, bitches.
Yeah,
Not
no,
anymore.
no, not anymore.
No.
Not today.
No.
Nope, not today.
And
Gone, then never mind. But she knows what she's saying.
She does.
so it's an article, you can Google it, saying
That's
that
crazy.
there are a lot of airlines that are saying, let's get on this Ozempic trend because the population
Get
will weigh
everybody on
less.
drugs. Let's
It
go.
will help with
How?
Amy
So
Simone's been
American.
joking so much about this.
This is
though.
so American. Give everybody Ozempic. Hand it out like candy. We need to get a fly lighter.
like the new Ritalin.
Why is it
Yeah.
so
New
jacked
Adderall.
up? Well, okay, well, in all fairness, one way to lose a ton of weight is to have explosive diarrhea on a flight.
Oh my gosh.
And on the September 1st
not gonna
flight
make
of
it.
literally, okay, truly 4 days ago. I'm trying not to say that word so much. It was so bad. Someone had explosive diarrhea.
Yeah, exactly.
They had
Down
to
the
turn
entire
around over
aisle.
Central Virginia, so they had already made the flight most of the way.
I'm already feeling queasy. Could we not?
It was part of our schedule
No.
a minute.
I
They
know.
left Atlanta. They left Atlanta and they
Headed
got
here.
no, they were coming to Barcelona.
I
They were
totally
only
thought it was-
on like an hour.
Okay,
Yeah,
excuse
yeah.
me. I'm sorry, loves. So
Oof.
they had just taken off.
Mm-hmm.
They were flying over Virginia. Nothing everyone expects to shit like Joe Manchin. Oh, that's West Virginia, whatever.
How terrible
But
is that?
sorry. Oof.
not the joke.
Stab, stab,
I
stab, stab.
can't imagine being on that plane.
It was a biohazard issue. It
Oh
was called in. The pilot of the DL-194 called it in saying, we have a biohazard issue. We have a passenger who had diarrhea all the way through the airplane. So they want to come back to it.
Houston, we have a problem.
All the way through the airplane. So it led. I can't even.
And evidently, I read
can't
that
even.
they sprayed a vanilla scented sanitizer on top of it. So
Yeah.
the people interviewed from that plane said
Vanilla
it was
poop.
the most
It's just vanilla poop.
terrible smell ever. And you know that air recirculates. It's not like
Oh
they're
my God.
venting it out.
Oh no! Stop! I am
Come
so.
on.
I'm already really nauseous.
sardines
guys.
in a
Yeah, we're
can.
gonna switch
Killing
off
me.
to this one. We're gonna switch
You're
off to that one. But
killing
that shit
me.
is real. The other thing that was okay. Let's lighten it up. Lighten it up. Drink your ginger beer, dear. Drink your ginger beer. This thing that went viral 2 or 3 weeks ago. That when we listen to this in the future, it's gonna sound cliched probably because everyone's gonna say, "Yeah, guys do that." This Roman Empire. Do men, heterosexual, mostly men, think consistently on the Roman Empire?
It is just the weirdest thing ever.
My father said, "Yeah, mijito, why?" That was his.
Seriously?
Yeah.
At what point during the day does that just pop into your head when you're like brushing your
Probably
teeth?
when you're shitting, because
Right,
you know,
like-
guys,
They're
we
like,
take,
"We
we
didn't have
spend 20,
toilets in the
15,
Roman
30
Empire."
minutes reading, doing, flipping, scrolling, typing,
Oh,
working. on the-
maybe.
Lucas
Why-
has a workstation in the bathroom.
I
Right,
do
right.
not. Well, actually, I
does.
do is the
He
bidet.
does. He does.
The
He
bidet.
does.
Ladies, just keeping it real.
He
But I've
does.
noticed it since we were kids because, we grew up mixed in the family. There were boys and girls. And Mom and Kiki, they get in, they do their business, wash their hands, and go.
Yeah,
and
we don't
boys,
waste our time.
No, and guys, we enjoy our time there. We let it rip and we talk to Jesus. Here they say Señor Roca, but I say Jesus. No, I'm not going to do it again. So, okay. Yeah.
Vamos.
Next topic. So, have you asked your fellow brethren or fatherin if they think on the Roman Empire?
I just think that's so weird, but I will. I mean, I can't imagine. Wow, at what time does that pop into your head?
I
know
had
you say
all my
it.
business folk and university students
they
text
said-
there, and most of them were yes. Their
Stop
fathers or
it.
boyfriends said yes.
Wow.
But I really
don't know
wonder if
why.
it's just the topic. Like if you change this and you said like the fall, I don't know, something else.
Is it
then
the
maybe
fall,
people would
though?
say like, it's like if you say don't think of an elephant and you think of an
fall.
elephant, like try
Mm-hmm.
not to think of this specific thing. I feel like if you say, do you think of the Roman Empire falling all the time? I don't know. I kind of feel
So
like they say,
weird.
oh yeah, I guess I do.
One of the
really-
responses I got was gladiators. I think of the gladiators and the strength and the tenacity that it was a father saying this. No, it was a boyfriend saying this to his live-in girlfriend.
What?
Yeah. It was a gladiator
Yeah,
thing.
I don't know. I can't relate to this. I don't know
And
because I don't.
And I also
So
thought,
weird.
and here's the thing: my basis, my university degree, is through history, specifically the Roman Empire and the British Empire. So
Okay.
I tutor on this
Well, so you're
consistently,
constantly.
but I don't think about it, and I think I kind of think it's a insecure heterosexual thing.
It's weird.
Insecure heterosexual.
I wonder if we were in Rome and we'd say, "Do you think of the fall of the Roman Empire?" They'd be like, "What?"
I'll tell you this: Italian men think of the United States and its power. They learn a lot. Even business Italian is rife with, and I speak Italian, is rife with business English, just English words.
Oh yeah.
So el ordinator is il computer, is a computer.
Oh.
There, there's just certain things that have been taken because of, Madison Avenue rules it all.
Yeah. Interesting.
Now there's more women in Madison Avenue, but I want to ask you girls something because this is something I love to talk about because I've been blessed with a big old one. And the issue of the micro penis and the small ass on men. Because we talk about it came
Do
up
you have
at
family
brunch.
listening to this?
I think I do.
Right.
I think I do.
Is there family?
We mentioned this was going to be on it. There was no veto of this in brunch.
But it
Shout out
came up
Petite
at brunch,
Bo.
but I'm not sure we mentioned it would go live. But
All
that's
right,
fine.
Let's talk about guys' insecurities about
This is
having
it.
a flat booty.
A
Because
flat
I didn't know
booty.
that was a thing. I didn't know that guys would be so insecure about that. Are they worried about like how clothes look on them? You know what? We don't give credence to guys enough about caring about their clothes. We just assume they throw on stuff and walk out the door and don't really care so much about fashion. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think sometimes, I don't know, at least for a certain class of people, there's more care on the look by men here than women?
Yeah, I do.
They notar.
I noticed that in Europe.
También.
I think
I've
it's
noticed that.
Europe.
I think it's
when you go to
situational.
Paris, when you go to Paris,
Italy, those
Yeah.
women,
Torino as well.
Madrid, there's a really
Yeah,
fashion.
Seville, las mujeres, las donas y hombres. Yeah, man. It's here, though, in Barcelona, Catalonia, I've seen that the men care more about a look at certain times than the women.
That's weird.
Like, I remember shout out Kelli Millions, fashionista, NYC, Houston, LA. And she was here with me a few years ago. We were walking around, and she was walking around, and she said, "Why do all the ladies here look like lesbians?" She was trying to be respectful.
Right.
But it was like, the joke here for me, I'm going to keep it real. What the hell? It's our podcast.
Yes.
Is that a flustered lesbian, or is that just a angry Catalan mom?
Now, you told me some history about the short hair and the Catalan mom. And
Well, and this
history.
is something that goes back to that.
Okay.
During the time pre and during Franco, people who were caught, specifically around the Ciutat Vella, members, wives of the Ateneu, they would be thrown out in the little placetas, and they would shave their heads
Wow.
for speaking Catalan and doing this stuff. And so it became an act of rebellion, specifically from the 50s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I think.
Keep your hair
to,
short.
Yeah, keep it short and look mannish.
Yeah.
Like screw the femininity, we'll take on like this because some Catalans. And so there's an identity, not necessarily that it's like pervasive and everyone knows this history, because believe me. But there is something to that. But going back to what we were speaking of in regards to not caring so much about what women and men think or look here. Let's go back to the original thing. The small ass men. Shout out to all women. Whatever you do and look, you are a queen. Rock that shit. But men with small asses. I'm a man with been blessed on both sides. and up here too. And I always hated my big ass growing up. Yeah, I did, because I couldn't fit into this typical jeans.
Jordache jeans.
I would never wear those. But like I had to buy Gerbo, Pepe, Cavaricci, Italian, European jeans, because guys have more butts here oftentimes than back in the States. Some of our white boys don't have it. But I noticed in the UK, a lot of our skinny white brothers do have a big butt. They have a little bubble butt, at least something there. I think it's the potatoes. I swear to God, it's the potatoes
it's
in
the
UK.
milk and cheese.
Might be better.
I have no
The butter.
idea.
Butter makes it
It's
better.
the
Butter makes it better.
Oh, that was clever.
That
I
is
see what you
good.
did there.
Butter.
The
Butter
butter.
makes it better.
Is that? I can't believe it's not butter. Or is it?
No,
Butter
that's
makes
just
it
all
better.
butter.
No,
I'm from the south
butter
of the U.S. We fry everything
makes
in
it
butter
better.
and lard.
Well, and
makes
France
everything
too.
better.
But is this an inferiority complex gauge for men? Because both of you have beautiful people in your life that might not be the biggest in the bum region.
Little baby butt.
And my ex as well had a...
I got nothing wrong with what I got going on in my life. He's
Amen.
perfect. No
Okay,
worries
all
there.
right. We won't say nothing.
He's
We won't say
listening.
nothing.
It's
And- but
listening or
also,
not, it's all good.
Nope, not today.
not when I'm swinging. But we focus so much on the women and how, and I told this to some of my businessmen the other day, you never have to step out and think about how a plurality, if not majority, of men or women are looking at you and thinking, I want to get a taste of that.
Yeah.
And every time an intelligent, vivacious, beautiful woman of any shape or size or color walks out, or sexuality, they have to kind of have that armor on a little bit somehow. Sometimes it's bigger than not, sometimes it's not.
Totally. I experienced that last night, actually, going out with my friends, because I don't
There you
go
go.
out. I don't go out a ton. Usually work late hours, blah blah blah. But it was an interesting when you haven't been out for a while, and then you go out and put on your red lipstick, and you go out, and people just are looking at you, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, I love your lips," and you're thinking, "Did I put my lipstick on for you or for me?" You start really thinking about that, and then they're what I do like here, I have to say, about, for me, the local men in Barcelona, they're not obnoxious. I don't think so. I find the most
They are
obnoxious men.
mama's boys, that's why. So they have a
Seriously,
little more
it's very
understanding.
different. They're more respectful, in my opinion. They're not gregarious. You're not getting like cat calls.
Well, you also deal with a certain type of men too.
That's true, but I mean, even the young ones to the older ones, I just feel like they're more respectful here. Where it's like in Italy, it's a different story.
Really?
But it's fun though.
What about LA?
Oh, LA, no, they wait for you to talk to them. That's very ego driven. They'll stand across the room and smile at you for 2 hours, and you're supposed to pick up on that as are you looking at, do you want to say something? Should we have a conversation, or are we just going to stare at each other for 2 hours? It's very, maybe fear of rejection.
I'm sorry, but at a 90s, I'm not going to name names, but at a 90s con thing last week, someone made a mad shout out to his wife. And that same person weeks before had been catcalling on you at an app that for exclusives, because our girl here is an exclusive. That's why we call her Queen Kelli.
Right. This is true. This is very true.
And then also, that's something I don't miss from the U.S.
No.
Is that overt fraudulence.
Yeah.
Because the next topic was to talk about things that we miss from the U.S. We're going to talk about some country music and play us out.
What do we miss from the U.S.? Well,
I don't miss that overt fakeness.
no.
That ish, I'm done. But I'm done with that also too with men in most generalities, which is why another little tryout of a create a cast we're doing is about this idea that guys don't do that with one of my homegirls.
Oh, that's funny.
Of things that how we relate to men in a new age, because I feel like sometimes men have been getting a stronger rap on things these days because it's accountability time.
Yeah, I think the tables have turned. Like the lens has turned definitely to men. And I was watching something about how they're demasculated, right? That they are emasculated. Yeah, that they're dehumanized and emasculated, right? And it was very interesting, really interesting. It was a Netflix thing, but I was watching it on the airplane. And the guy next to me was like, I swear to God, he was like, amen, like every so often, right? Because he was watching at the same time, watching the same movie. And they're just talking about how they really
Dehumanizing and emasculating.
right,
Wow.
dehumanizing and emasculating.
need
They
to know
just because they can't really do anything right because they have such a lens on them right now that it's like you go left too much and it's not, you go right too much. And I feel like, oh, now you know. Right? Because we've been dealing with that forever. If you do this, you're that, get a label. If you do this, you're that, you got a label. And now they're just feeling that, right? But I do love the ones that are stepping up, the men that are stepping up. And you see them walking their kids through the park. There's a lot of that here.
I know.
There's a lot of weekend
ton.
daddies, and I really love that. I think it's
Brooklyn
great.
too, just saying. It's happening more and more.
More
I
and more
think.
everywhere. I really I appreciate that. It seems like people are more the partner,
Yeah.
right?
It's beautiful. I think it's part of our generations coming up, realizing
yeah.
because we are kids of a certain time, and thankfully we grew up in a different era, and not the 40s, 50s, 60s. I'm not thankfully. I wish I could have lived the 70s. I really, really do. But the things I miss is I miss New York City and Mexican food.
Oh yeah. Well, they have Mexican food here, and I
They
found
do.
some good ones.
And there's some good ones.
Yeah.
But I mean, you should not have to go pay, 50 euros a person for good Mexican food or 80 euros a person for good Mexican. It's just, come on. It's Mexican food.
Right.
Okay. And
I
it's
want
all natural,
Dollar Street
gluten free. Yeah, exactly. Which you can get in certainly, you can't really get it in New York.
It's Cali, you can. I miss
California,
I miss it.
Texas, Michigan a lot because, my people, we're everywhere. Florida. But can you get that in the Carolinas?
What's that?
Good Mexican
The
food.
street tacos.
Oh,
and-
yeah. No. And they've got good, yeah.
Carolinas. They have everything. I want to know more about the islands. And another podcast, you need to regale us more about the Carolinas. I have a
There's
very
so much
big
history in
history
the
about
Carolinas.
exactly.
I was just telling my
but
friends
for
about
black
it.
folks, for
Wright
white folk,
brothers.
for our food,
Yeah.
for so much source of come from the Carolinas.
Yeah,
Northern Carolina and South Carolina, there's so much happening politically right now in the
Northern
Carolinas. And what's up with all of these closeted homosexual senators from the Carolinas? Right?
I don't know.
What is up? You
can't
got
help you
Lindsey
there.
Graham, and who's the other one?
You
From the
got me.
Carolinas?
I don't know. I just
Oh,
go
I
there
know.
twice a year, every year for High Point Market.
High Point Market.
Yeah.
What's his name? The black gentleman, Scott. Scott, and they're both closet gays. I swear. Allegedly. Let me learn from Wendy Williams. Allegedly.
Exactly.
Speaking of the Carolinas and being born in Texas and having Cali roots here.
Oh, yeah.
Country music.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was not a fan. And then when we were talking and I started remembering and I said, oh, shit. I do love me some country, especially Catholic.
You go on country.
Catholic.
That's right.
You know
especially
what?
them Catholic countries.
Every time I go home,
Country.
I go and visit my parents, and I jump in my dad's Ford 250, and it's stuck on country music, I swear. But it feels like home when I go home. That's what I want to do. I actually want
That
to
is-
do that. It's weird.
I can't listen to country music here. I hear it if it shuffles on my phone. It's like next, thank you, next. I can't do it. It's not the vibe. It's not the culture. I feel like I am like an alien in this world with country music in the background. When
Country
I go
music
home,
here, what is it? It's Shania Twain and Billy Ray Cyrus.
I don't even know.
It
what
is. It's
I
Shania
don't even
Twain.
have it. I don't
More than
know.
anything.
I
And
don't-
maybe
I
some
don't really
Taylor,
know.
because people love them some Taylor Swift.
That's
up
a
in this
pop
bitch.
pop
That's
country.
I mean, I'm
yeah.
old, not old school. I mean, but I'm older country, and this new country I don't really know anything about. But when I go back and I hear it on the radio, it's like, oh yeah.
So
it
what's
takes me
country to
back
you? What's country to
16.
you?
Like I remember when I got my license and I got to control the music in my car. I was Tim McGraw all the way. I
God, I
just
was house
completely
music.
ruined that CD because it was on repeat.
Tim
so
McGraw.
I mean, but that was back when
Who's he married to?
you
Is
know,
that Faith Hill?
Faith Hill.
Yeah.
He's cute.
Let's-
You
yeah,
sure he's
yeah.
on? You sure he's on your team?
Exactly. I like him. Not a fan of hers, but that's all right.
Well, back then though, they were. I mean, back in the '90s, they were huge.
Oh
both
my
of them.
God, gouge my ears out now.
Where the green grass grows. That was my jam in my big Suburban. I had a 1986 Suburban.
Oh my gosh, that's
it was people
hilarious.
laughed at me when I got out because I'm 5'1".
Yeah, that's
and I would
just-
hop out of this 3-road massive white Suburban. And I'm sorry, are you sitting on phone books? How'd you get in that thing?
I like Miranda Lambert. She's sassy.
Yes.
That heifer is smart as hell.
I like her.
And she knows she doesn't give an F.
No.
But she didn't get give an F after 30, 35.
She's
When you start giving an F, I think expats have more of that. I don't give an F.
Oh yeah.
You
It
have to
takes
have
a
that
lot
connip to
of-
get out.
Yes, for sure.
And Miranda Lambert gives that out of country music.
Don't people tell you all the time? That's so brave, right? When you leave and you move.
People from there,
"That's so
people from
brave."
our Five Eyed countries have a tendency to say that.
But people feel
so
they
brave.
don't care.
No, no, no.
Whatever, you're
like
one
it.
of many.
Exactly.
You ain't no thing.
Es un altraguiri,
Sometimes I get from here. Why did you leave? Because I'll say I'm from Southern California, Orange County area.
I
and
always get
always-
that. Why did you leave New York for
Right.
it?
Yeah.
Or I get, do you speak Spanish and Catalan? Well, the Catalan not so much, but the Spanish, it's like you come here and they kind of expect you to assimilate, learn the language and everything. And
Really
it's like,
quick.
venga,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I've been here a while.
She'd be all like,
Vamos.
she's all like, and then
right.
I go, and then I'm all, okay, my loves. We're going to play out with something that's classic. Well, it's not that classic country, but it is classic country from a queen who, incidentally,
Yes.
has been responsible for shipping out to the world hundreds of millions of free books for children.
So
Love it.
great.
She's
On top
amazing.
of having a brand new, and it was a #1 as well, rock album
Yeehaw.
with so many mother efforts. Yeah, her new album is all rock. She's doing it with so many beautiful people, including Heart. We played her a few weeks ago in our last show at the last break. But this is going to be Dolly Parton, 9 to 5. We're going to be back monthly doing this, and once we get this rolling, we're going to be doing it bi-weekly. I think so. And thank you so much, my sisters, for being
Oh
here.
my
making
gosh,
this
it was
happen.
a
We're going to
pleasure.
pop over to a totally different source of music. But this is some country right now with Dolly Parton, 9 to 5. Folks, the Royal Expat Society is here to jam it up with you. And next time, we're going to be sober and then drunk at the end of the show. All right, we love you. Keep it real, keep it short, and we'll see you on the flip side. And we'll see you in approximately 3 to 4 minutes.
Nice.
welcome back for hour two, or at least the last 45 minutes of hour two with the Club with Lucas, but I am not alone today. Again, I want to give another mad shout out to Lucas Herrera Music, and we are back after a couple of tracks. And my queen, one of my queens in the city, Lady Elsa Jasmine Nightingale, she's a triple threat, everybody. She's joining me here today on the club, but this is not the club now because we're segueing into Guys Don't Do That.
Guys don't do
De
that.
que estén parlando. We want to welcome everybody again, okay, back into the show and to hour two, because I have a question for everybody. And sister, I need you to help me out here. Are you sick of gender norms?
I am sick of gender norms.
On this show, and this is what we're going to be doing with part two. We're going to be, Lucas is going to be having his queens and some of his kings joining us here. And what we're launching right now today, and in some weeks, we're going to be talking about this more and more. We want to talk about what masculinity means to us, especially in a world where we're doing our best, actually, to be more inclusive, to be more diverse, to be more together. Now, we're not going to sing The Parent Trap in togetherness, but when we talk about these things, we have a lot of things that we can debate on this. Now, going back to the question, why are we a little fins de aquí with gender norms, Lady Elsa?
I just think it's gender norms. They're steeped in history, they're steeped in patriarchy, they're steeped in white supremacy, and ultimately they don't serve anyone. I think that's what
including the men, even though they think they do
Exactly,
sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that's what you and I have been discussing a lot, right? Is there's often, as an intersectional feminist myself,
Amen.
I often
Shout
think
out.
about intersectional women's rights, and yet actually we don't often talk about how the patriarchy and patriarchal structures and expectations of what it means to be a man just utterly fuck us all.
Well, can I ask you a question? Before we dive into more of the men situation here, intersectional feminism kept coming up on Al Gore's interwebs last week because Olivia Rodrigo, the singer, keeps talking about it. Whereas other people, Taylor Swift, do not. What is intersectional feminism before we move into the talk of that, the boys? I think it's really important that our audience know this.
I absolutely love the question. So ultimately, feminism is just looking for equity among all genders, right?
Amen.
And when we say all genders, you and I are really passionate about the fact that we are definitely including gender non-binary individuals, trans individuals. It's an all-encompassing term of what we mean by gender.
Amen.
However, as we are seeking equity and equality, intersectionalism ultimately recognizes that it is not a monolith of equality, right? Inequality affects every unserved group, whether that's racially, whether that's economically, whether that's in terms of ableism or being disabled, whatever context you're looking at, including LGBTQIA plus rights, ageism, whatever you're looking at. Ultimately, as we aim to achieve gender equality, intersectionalism recognizes that we cannot ignore, for example, misogynoir, which is the sexism and racism combined towards women of color.
Misogynoir. Do you know, I've not heard that before. Okay. And this is one of the things that, I mean, I've encountered this with some of my university sessions, especially, or some of my Cambridge sessions, where we have, or even in the gay community, as I am a member of the LGBTQ community, where there has been people that, well, I don't date Latinos. Well, I don't date black folks, Asians. And this stuff happens.
Do people really say that?
Yes, they do. And it's more rampant than I would care to admit, especially in New York City, folks. Let's be real. And LA, you know we're guilty people.
Wow.
I'm not. But it has been said. And so this is not something that just affected the women's movement. It affects the LGBTQ community. It affects a lot the non-binary and trans, as you've mentioned. But going back to what we're here today, and guys don't do that at least once a month, if not much more often as this show takes off with the podcast. Lady Elsa and I are going to be bringing you people that we know, people that we don't know, probably Instagram people as well, to talk about some of the things that start to differentiate what guys do and what guys don't do, why we want to break down gender norms or stereotypes that we all have. Because as Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac once said, not everybody can just be fit into, not anybody can be fit into a specific set of labels. But let's talk about some of these things, because one of the things that we talked about this weekend or this week while we were preparing this was also understanding specific topics, like, for example, stay-at-home dads.
Yeah.
Or paternity leave. We've got some research, and my queen's going to be doing a lot of this for us as well today. In fact, you've got a lot of sometimes daunting, if not scary. Let me move this out of the way. Folks, we had to play Tupac again because I threw this in the middle of this on the table. But, things that might surprise some of us.
Exactly.
Last night I was saying it makes me righteously indignant, but I'm going to control myself. But, for example, what is some of the stuff that you found out, my love? Specifically talking about this, please.
Exactly. So, as you were saying, I think this week you and I are just utterly fascinated by fatherhood, stay-at-home dads, the perception of stay-at-home dads, and ultimately paternity leave, right? Because I work in the corporate sector and I often talk about maternity leave. We talked about the United States. It's one of the only countries with a high GDP or GNI that does not have nationally mandated maternity leave.
Speaking specifically of the U.S.
Of the US, yes, there's federally but not nationally. And if you imagine that's the world we're in terms of maternity leave, what impact is that having on children if their fathers are not legally able to take a standard and a decent amount of time out of their work in order to bond with their children? There is a plethora of studies that show the positive impact that we shouldn't be surprised to know when a father is actively involved in the raising of his child. But one fact that just blew my mind and I'd love to talk about is that statistically speaking, in the EU, not in the US, only 1 in every 100 men take more than 6 months to stop work and care for their child. Now, in one camp, you might be saying, okay, fair enough. At the moment, statistically speaking, households are dual income. It's now very typical for both parents to go out and work.
This is 1% of men, though.
1% of men, exactly. However, when you look at legally mandated or legally allowed for maternity leave in countries like Denmark, yes, there are some moves to provide equity for men to be able to also enjoy that, but it is nowhere where it should be, in short. So what do you think? 1%?
I think, well, personally, you said the 1%. But if we look at the statistic for women, I believe that we found that it was over about a third of women take that time off.
1 in 3.
1 in 3. So when we're looking between, let's say push it to nearly 35% of women in the workforce doing that, and only 1% of men, there's a massive discrepancy between that. And one of the things I've noticed in some of my Cambridge sessions with batch and high school, college, uni students is that a lot of boys feel rather sometimes defensive about this situation where they're being put into a position of, well, I'm not doing this. I didn't do these things. But we do see, just by what you're saying, the disparity of that. There's another one from the Pew Research Center that you sent over the other day, where half of American moms, now this is, of course, U.S. American moms, but, the Americas, but half of U.S. American mothers feel that they do, or half of Americans, feel that mothers do a better job at caring for babies. Okay, so 50% versus 8% for fathers. I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh.
Yeah.
But what the hell?
It's pretty heartbreaking, right? I mean, look, I'm a practical person. I think we're both practical people. There are certain activities that currently, biologically speaking, physiologically speaking, only a certain subset of human beings, let's be really inclusive here, can provide to a child in their most important early months.
True that.
But let's not be really reductive here and suggest that being a vehicle for milk is the only role of a mother or parent in the short term when children are really young, right? So I also wanted
vehicle for milk. I love that one. That's a great way to say it.
I also wanted to pick up on some research that I found the other day, which I thought was wonderful. So we often talk about hormones that women experience or people who are carrying children experience when they are pregnant and post-natal. However, this research actually showed that fathers, much like mothers, encounter transformative changes to their hormones and neural networks when they enter parenthood.
Fathers do.
Fathers do. Changes that seem to help them become more nurturing and more empathetic. So don't we want this transformation to be possible for every gender?
For everybody.
Right?
Exactly. So, okay, so this is a recent study as well, right? So this indicates to me, because one of the big things I'm always bitching at my uni students is I want you boys, I focus on the boys, to read, please. I need you guys to read a little bit more than your compatriot sisters. Because there was a study that came out of, I believe it was Oxford and Harvard done together just a few years ago before the pandemic, that says people that read have the highest levels of empathy in just a natural state. the more you read, specifically starting when you're younger, and you continue reading, it just builds empathy because in your mind, you're consistently creating new neural pathways of learning
Yeah.
about different things. And so through reading and through having children,
Yeah.
well, at least with men, that does build a little more of the equity and the parity. The one thing that I'm going to throw in here is as of literally this, I need to not say literally because someone's been joking to me how U.S. Americans say that too much, and it's true. But 3 or 4 weeks ago in August, the latest statistic came out. Now, this is a years-long study that was done after the pandemic because they wanted to see. But in Spain, the average age to leave your home now in Spain and Catalonia, as we talked about with my brother earlier, is 31. It's nearly 33 and 34 in Italy and Greece. And so if we're talking about this equity parity and specifically with empathy and understanding, wait until they're well into their 30s to get that, to start watering and flourishing the empathy gene. Does that still leave a little bit of, we're still kind of left out in the mix a little bit, men, in regards to nurturing and watering that empathy gene? I'm just throwing this out there because I'm thinking, my God, I was out at 17, 31. I told my father on the drive, wouldn't you have loved to have Matthew and me for 14 more years? He was like, no, mijito. What was your life like with Dad? What was your nurturing? Because I think, if we're talking about men, usually our first example is our daddies. What was your daddy like? Out of curiosity.
So I never miss an opportunity to talk about my father. You know that. You've met him. We all love him. Before I do, I just want to touch on something that you said about leaving home. So I think when we talk about maternity leave, paternity leave, stay-at-home dads, fatherhood, motherhood, parenthood, etc., I think often what we are negating to discuss is the economic availability of those opportunities to people, right? So when we talk about leaving home later, what I often think of is that economically speaking now, whether it comes to buying at home, financial security, investment, financially speaking, younger generations, they have a lot pitted against them that older generations weren't free from entirely, but it was a different ball game, right? So if you want this freedom to be able to, I don't know, start a family, have independence, water plants, figuratively or literally, I think there's also a lot about the financial aspect and privilege to play. In the other respect, when you ask me about my father, I think you're right. For the lucky of us to grow up with a father figure, it doesn't have to be an actual father or parent. I think that has a huge impact on your perception of masculinity and manhood. And for me, in some respects, my family bucked gender norms. My father, for example, does almost all of the cooking in our household, and it is wonderful, wonderful. But nonetheless, when you look at working, for example, my mum stayed home as long as she could, I think 3 or 4 years. My dad was working. And, I'm absolutely not here to be pejorative. I'm not here to say the man should stay at home, the woman should work, vice versa. But what I would like to see as we push for gender equality, which is how you first started this, is it's not about pushing or allowing for more women to enter the workforce after having had a child. It's not just that. It's also allowing for the freedom of parents overall, but also fathers, to be able to enjoy that time with their child, because I think that will equal the playing field in a way we don't often talk about. And the final point I'll make is, statistically speaking, when we talk about gender equality, at least in the corporate sector, it's not on par in terms of pay and promotions, but you aren't as far off in the early 20s. It's actually when you become of childbearing and child-rearing age that you start to see this huge disparity between, again, we're being very binary here, men and women. There's a lot of lovely individuals that fall in between those categories. But you start to see these huge disparities spike. And so I think the reason I'm here ranting so much about paternity leave is that I would like not to have to allow for a situation where you have to look at who's earning more, who's earning less, and be very strategic in parenthood. I think you should be able to enjoy the freedoms of, enjoying your child when they're young.
Amen to that. And I think, like you said, those of us who were lucky to have that, my father was always, he was the one at our events, at our plays, at our sporting events, or whatever, our honor rolls, certificate stuff, more than my mother, who was, my mother was a workaholic, but so was my father. They all ran businesses. But he was the one that drove us to school, made sure we were awake, did you do your homework, brought us back from school. It was always dad. So that identity, and he was always the younger dad in the mix because my mom was almost 8 years his junior. So he was always, 5 to 10 years younger than all the other dads and better looking. Still is.
Lucky him.
And that was one of the things that I noticed. And when you talk about the work disparity or the work, that issue in general, it's interesting because I remember that there were statistics when I was in my history and sociology classes back at the beginning of the millennium, just 20 years ago, that said that there would not be an equal percentage of workers in the workforce of females until near 2050. And just before the pandemic, women caught up to the 50-50 level in the United States, 30 years before the original prediction. Now, that same year, and this is what happened because of the pandemic, in December of 2020 to January of 2021, every single job that was lost in the United States of America, okay, December of 2020 to January 2021, was a female job. 100% of all the jobs that were lost that month of the holidays were females. Not one male that was reported lost a job in the United States of America. We're talking scores of thousands. Yes, it's the first time that's ever happened. The only time it's ever happened. Every job that was lost was by a female. Not one man lost a job. It's the weirdest thing that had ever happened. Exactly. And it brought the statistic exorbitantly lower again. Between 2021 and to now, it's gone back up to we're at the parity of 50-50, which again is still 40, 30, 25 years before they expected it to happen. But that one statistic for me alone was basically we're in a pandemic, women get back to the house. And so that again throws off the balance. One of the things you wrote earlier was that men who request family leave are viewed as weaker and lacking in certainty in certain issues, putting them at greater risk of being penalized or let go in times of downsizing. So then that throws off men specifically, but then that comes down from the higher ups, right? The CEOs, the owners, the directors, whatever. 9 times out of 10, what is the sex of those CEOs, directors, and supervisors? And so that means then, do we have to start changing, and how do we start changing the mentalities of mindsets? I find it very difficult, no? I don't know. What do you think? I'm not going to poo-poo. No poo-pooing. Because we can all do this, but God bless America. What do you think?
Well, I think the studies that you cited are fascinating, right? I think that kind of data is fascinating. I also wanted to flag that men, I think this is the same study, men who take absence to care for family, and care for family here, we can also be inclusive here and talk about the fact that it may be caring for a relative. It might not be an infant child. There are many ways to be a parental figure, even if that may not be your own child. But men who take absence to care for family receive more negative performance ratings than women who opt out for similar reasons. So I think something that I want to flag here is, we introduced at the beginning of this segment what this segment is called, Men Don't Do That. And I think it's really about the perception of manhood and masculinity and what that really means. I mean, in my life, for example, my brother, he is one of the most hands-on and amazing fathers I've ever seen. In the household with his wife, the way they divvy up tasks and prevent mental load from bearing only on one of them is just incredible. But nonetheless, when we're at parties and their children were young and he would, take the child for a walk or change a nappy, you could just see he was lauded with praise, like, best dad ever. And he's like, well, no, changing a nappy is the bare minimum. So I think what I want to say here is that we've got this juxtaposition whereby in one respect, we can have fathers who are now being far more engaged. Statistically speaking, men do not have less of a desire than women. And again, all the genders that fall between them to be engaged. There is no study that suggests men are worse parents or that they don't want to be engaged. In fact, there's studies that show the opposite. But if there's still a perception within the workplace that taking the time needed is unacceptable, at least in terms of remuneration or in terms of performance ratings, we have to question the roles that exist in the first place, right?
Hell yeah. Exactly. And that's one of the things, when we think about earlier at the beginning of the segment, you said at the beginning of the show, sorry, that only federally in the country I was born in is that mandated. And that was only happened in the last 2 years where President Grandpa Joe Biden just said, hands down, I want this for everybody. Then they tried to pass that through the House and the Senate. And of course, the right-wing administration decided, no, we don't want that for everybody. And this is something now many corporations and companies do give that. But when we were speaking, I'm planning on this the other day, it came up that up until recent times anyway, only 2 countries have not provided this in a constitutional or federally mandated way for women to have, or fathers to have, mostly women, let's be real, or people who bear children, to have this time off, this leave off. And those 2 countries that did not permit that were Papua New Guinea, which I have to say that because in the 90s, cannibalism was still permitted there 25 years ago. Okay, so Papua New Guinea and the United States of America. That is where the whole righteous indignation comes in, where my country, which is supposed to be which is the powerhouse, does not look at the opportunity of creating the next generation as a need for parents to have that time off, neither mother nor father. Again, thank you, President Joe Biden, for promoting that for the federal administration, for federal workers. But Lord, if they're going to have that mentality, if you leave, if you're a man, that works against you.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? I would think.
It's so difficult, right? Because I think when we talk about a decision, it's so hard to understand where there's just where there's causality and where there's simply some kind of relationship between 2 variables, right? So it's really hard to say X determines Y and vice versa. I think for me, I always just come back to the notion that it's up to every single individual whether they choose to take time out of the workplace to care for children or to have a caring role or not. If we create the perfect conditions such that everyone has that opportunity and nonetheless it's not taken, we have to ask ourselves 2 questions. We have to ask, is this because there's a preference, in which case I don't believe in over-engineering, or is this because there's societal connotations and expectations? And I would say that the latter is probably more likely. And I guess if I am to pose a question back to you, I'm interested in what, if it, for those of you who are listening, for what we can do in our everyday lives to promote a more inclusive notion of fatherhood and parenthood. And I think a good example, I'll kick things off, a good example is I used to work in schools some time ago, and if both parents come in, there's often a tendency, also in a medical situation, if you're bringing your child in to see a doctor, I think there's often an anecdotal tendency I've read about for the doctor, for the teacher, or the person in a caring position to revert to the mother or the mother figure and to direct information to them, to ask them questions directly and equivalent. And so I think in this context, we should aim, where possible, to include every person in the relationship or in the pairing relationship. Co-parenting should be included there as well. When we are discussing fundamental issues to the children, because otherwise I think there's an expectation that also that mental load, which I'm always ranting about, is then held by the mother, and I don't think that's fair on either or any of the genders involved.
No, and it moves away from the equity parity that we're speaking about. When you say some things that could be done, these are things that one of the things I'm going to mention that's been actually happening already in New York and London, I know specific, for well over a decade, but it's the inclusion of daycare and playground centers in corporate offices, in the basement office, where you actually have something built in where daddy brings the kids, can go see them between a meeting, especially when they're, between 1 and 3, 1 and 4, before they're not necessarily in school. And that aids working parents in a massive way. One of the things that was sort of, depending, states' rights in my country, but that was passed was all of these provisions for childcare. Childcare is one of the most expensive things and usually runs families in the U.S. I believe it estimated is over $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more than what people make on a monthly salary here.
Yes.
So if you're having to pay that, then that's why often mothers and or fathers stay at home because, I mean, that's my paycheck.
Yes.
You know, and one of the statistics you threw out was that the Census Bureau, and probably my country, but others, defines a stay-at-home parent as simply one who is out of the labor force to care for home and family. You mentioned earlier, it's not just the kids. Right now, I'm sure we've heard of this sandwich, and if you haven't, listen up, children, the sandwich generations.
What is the sandwich generation?
Where you have parents, typically these are parents between their 40s and 60s, who have elder parents in their 80s, 90s that they have to take care of, and kids or uni students, in their teens, 20, who they also have to take care of. So the bread is the parents are taken care of and the kids are taken care of, and they're in the middle, working their 40, 50, 60 hours a week, running a house, but having to take care of, an ailing mom or dad and a kid. And that puts that pressure, and unfortunately, modern statistics say the majority of that pressure, by over 80%, is on who? Women. And so I think when there's evidence that, like he's put here, male caregivers are less equipped for the role than female ones, I believe that means, do we have to change what has been expected? Just as we're changing the expectations of what women are literally, oh God, there I go with that bloody word again, that are literally permitted to do. And we have to think, the Constitution in Spain, 78, 79 was enacted, but in the little villages and pueblos of Darnius and Girona or wherever next to Madura, those rights to women didn't hit till the 80s, well into 81, 80. So just as we have to change concepts and mindsets there, we have to do it on a broad spectrum. So where do we put the tools? We mentioned tools. One of them could be providing these things for parents, providing the government, providing child care and refuge for fathers and mothers who are working. What other things can be done, though, I wonder, to help and balance this equity parity?
So the situation in the United Kingdom is is not different at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure that childcare in the United Kingdom is the most expensive of any European country. And I would like to flag here Pregnant Then Screwed and a lot of other great organisations who are working to create equity, not just for mothers, but also for fathers. Excellent
name, Pregnant Then Screwed.
Pregnant Then Screwed. And what they're talking about is the discrimination that takes place for... in this case, they focus more on motherhood. They call it the motherhood penalty. But I think that what we have explored in this segment is around fatherhood. And if there's a motherhood penalty, what fatherhood penalty also exists? It may be more subtle. It may be not as sexy to talk about. It may not be as covered in data at the moment in terms of studies. But I think it's a topic worth exploring, because if we are to create an equitable landscape and create these sort of legislative incentives, we have to start there. So I guess the points that I'm trying to make are, in terms of childcare, you raise an absolutely incredible point, because if you look at the majority of households, whether that's in the EU, the UK, the US or elsewhere, if they are working jobs that do not provide at least adequate holiday pay and at a minimum maternity leave, let alone paternity leave, that doesn't really create the financial incentives to upend the status quo, right? Exactly. So if I am to give a few conclusions to the question, what could upend the status quo, and I think you've mentioned a load of these, it would be creating far more affordable childcare. It would be the provision of paternity leave in a way that encourages these individuals to take it. In, looking at some of the research that we've explored, there is also, in some countries, the opportunity for paternity leave exists, but it isn't taken. And I think that's where it's going to take this longer shift of norms, expectations, and values, particularly about the impact that it can have on your career. If you're an ambitious individual, I focus a lot on the impact it can have on women, and when they are of childbearing age, of which I am, what that can do to you when you are interviewing, etc. But I just don't want to leave out the male perspective, if there is such a binary thing, to this, because I think there's huge benefits to having both masculine, feminine, and everything in between energy when you're a child.
Exactly. And that not to quote Lady Hillary, but I'm going to do it. Hillary Clinton wrote a wonderful book that I highly recommend called It Takes a Village. And it really does. And now that I work in education, I can't deal with little ones, but with, high school or uni kids and post grads that need to move out of mom and dad's house. But I'm just saying, there is that necessity
If
to
they
do
can.
that if they can and when they can. But don't be afraid to live with roommates. It's okay. Find 3 or 4 friends. You can do it. Someone always has a dead grandma. Now, I'm sorry, but it's true. Jesus loves everyone. I just love this because you mentioned pregnant then screwed, girl. And so I did a and the second thing that came up is talking about paternity leave. And right here it says, new research is uncovering that economic and health benefits are consistently boosted with paternity leave. So I just want to throw this. These are brand new statistics, too, from this website. Countries with more than 6 weeks of paid paternity leave have a 4% smaller gender wage gap and 3.7, so 4% smaller labor force participation gap. So it reduces by nearly 5%, okay, with smaller wage gap and labor force. Next one, closing gender employment gaps in all UK authorities would thereby increase economic output by 23 billion pounds or nearly 30 billion euros when you're talking of European countries. Only 18% of Brits think that 2 weeks paternity leave or less is enough. Okay, so less than 1 in 5. And they can go, no, I'm just kidding. And 1 in 5, 22%, dads and partners that are eligible for paternity leave, they don't take it. And it goes right back to what you said 30 minutes ago, because they're going to be looked at differently if they do that. But all of these things, according to the Center for Progressive Policy, and pregnant then screwed, and women in data, are reporting to us that no, you are not left in the lurch when this paternity it raises the economic parity. But the other thing that I want to say is, because this came up in a uni class, I've learned so much patience. Oh my God, guys. And one of the things that came up was, why would you not want your female counterpart, your wife, your sister, whatever, to not be making as much or more money than you? Because you're going to be bringing double into the family, into the home. That's the whole point. And then it came down to one of my genius of a guy, Paul, shout out, I love you, man. He said, because a guy's insecurity is often based on how much money's in my account. If my wife's making more money than I am, or my girlfriend, am I less than? No, firstly, you're not. All right? You're not. But secondly, how do we start then convincing men to be more secure about themselves? A secure man is not going to be flipping out about, oh, this one's trans or this one's gay or she's making more money or whatever, because they're secure in themselves. So how do we make men more secure?
I think that's a really tough question, but I think what I
Definitely.
would start exploring with is this topic that we came into on the outset. What is masculinity? And I think it's really, we just need to also be kind to ourselves, historically speaking. It's really not that long ago that the 1950s, nuclear family was purported not just in, popular culture, in adverts, in television, in, a whole plethora of different contexts. If you're receiving messages from birth that your role is being the provider, and historically speaking, you would have gone out and hunted a boar or killed a lion and dragged it back to the den.
Although that is kind of hot, I'm just saying.
It's really
That's kinda
hot. We were talking about how
Yeah.
hot that was yesterday. But nonetheless, we go from that really, caveman mentality of a certain element of protectionism, and we then move that into a more capitalist context. And I think here we haven't uttered the potentially dirty term that is capitalism here, but I think we've touched on a lot of the themes, right? Where if we move that really outdated mentality of what it means to be a man into a modern context, there are certain status symbols that we associate more with masculinity. And I don't like to say it because it's not that I don't think a woman can drive a Ferrari, but if we think about the midlife crisis, what comes to mind? It's like a red sports car, a dude driving along. So I guess my point is,
Straight up.
I want to reimagine and explore what masculinity should mean and what it can mean, because there's so many inspiring people that I think have inspired us to have this conversation and hopefully have others. about what, in this context of what we've been discussing, fatherhood means, but really overall, what does masculinity mean? Because if we decouple the notion that masculinity was about dragging boars into caves and is now about earning loads of money, establishing dominance, playing this vital role in a capitalist context, whatever weird connotations you want to bring up, and actually question if maybe the term masculinity should be avoided altogether. I'm very willing to explore where actually new terminology should be employed in order to be as inclusive as possible. But either way, I look forward to exploring men, non-gender conforming individuals, women and others who are essentially bucking the trend and the norms associated with what it means to be a man.
Amen. And that right there is just a commencement of the definition of masculinity in its many varied forms. I used to say in business sessions, this came up, and I want to know what you think. I feel like femininity in any one of its aspects always exists, with or without a man existing there. But masculinity, or at least the attribution of or showing of it, I feel does not truly tend to exist unless the feminine aspect is there to see it.
Interesting.
Where a man by himself is just, you know, whatever, talking like doing his thing by himself. But when he's with this group, especially when they're, you know, teens to 25, hey, chata, and like that, when he's with a group. So when there's other men to see it, then he's being a man because the femininity. So I almost feel like without that woman being there, that masculinity is just within themselves, and then they have to try to show that masculinity when a woman's there. But by themselves, they're not going to say that usually. And there's this, I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying that the expression of masculinity mostly seems to come up when there's a femininity and there's other guys to impress.
Interesting.
And it's pathetic, because to me that's just another just demonstration of insecurity. But I don't want to. We're not dodging guys. We're not saying anything bad. I'm just saying I've noticed that as a man, you know, over the years, over my 39 years. I'm 74, guys. I'm 74. But
going on 21.
Hell yeah. And that's what guys don't do that. And we're going to be bringing you at least once a month. We're starting this off. But we're going to be exploring these topics because I believe that we're living in a world where the equity and parity is going to be happening. We do live in a country, in Catalonia right now, the graduation rate is 56 female, 44 male. In my country, the United States of America, where I was born, it's 60 female, 40 male. It's a 20% disparity there in education for graduates of high school and university. And the same here. It's pretty typical in the West, actually, now, more female graduates. So does that mean that the future is more female than we've seen in the past? I believe so. And I believe it's very important that guys can do that and learn that it's all good. It's all good. We're here to share that. And that's one of the beauties anyway. Is there anything else that we should kind of put a finger on before we start to make like trees and leaf? That's a terrible pun. Oh my God.
I think the thing that we have to, you know, for example, the term "the future is female," I understand the sentiment behind it, and I'm willing to celebrate. Again, I come back to a corporate context because that's where I exist, that's where I operate, that's where I work. I'm really willing to accept where that sentiment is applied with good faith in an aim to suggest that right now, if we have majority male boards or majority male executive leadership teams, that might look very different in the future. They may be majoritively female or women-led. I think women-led is the more inclusive term. However, what I worry about with phrases like that is that it can be potentially off-putting and almost harnessed by men's rights activists, the Andrew Tates of the world and others, who essentially will take a quote out of context and ultimately use it and weaponize it. So what I'd like to do here, and we are seeing, and I would like to flag that probably as my final point, that while we're seeing some progress on gender equality, whether that's in the corporate sector, in the political sector or others, you will always have, for every 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think we are seeing, you know, like we were a few years ago with the resurgence of populist parties within the European Union, we are seeing a resurgence of a type of misogyny that is really very targeted, very specific, and now very different because it's operating on an online playing field in a way that it wasn't. So I think my message here and our goal with Men Don't Do That is to try and, you know, for all the acid, try and find the alkaline to neutralize that and say, okay, how
Lovely,
can
well
we
said.
celebrate masculinity? Because masculinity can mean whatever we want it to. How can we celebrate whether it's you were talking about a group that you knew that were living as a throuple, or whether we can talk about male ballet dancers, or whatever you want, male stay at home dads, whatever
yeah.
stereotype you want to employ. How can we inject joy into redefining what it means to be a man?
And that is what this first intro edition of Men or Guys Don't Do That. Which one do we want?
Guys don't do
Guys
that.
don't do that.
Guys
Maybe in the future we'll do a gay guys don't do that type of issue. But this was our first intro. Lady Elsa Jasmine Nightingale, thank you so much for making this
my God,
happen.
thank you.
And we're going to be bringing this to you at least once a month, folks. So you're going to see much more of this queen sitting next to me. And folks, next week we're going to give a mad shout out. And thank you, Senor Eduardo, for being here, my new tech brother. And another mad shout out to Lucas Herrera. Remember this, folks. You can catch him this weekend in San Cugat, and then again in Sabadell next Wednesday at the Velvet Room BCN with our boy Yo Day. Shout out. And then again on the Friday the 13th at Ocaña and Plaza Real here in the beautiful city of Barcelona. Folks, the Royal Expat Society and I will be joining you next week, and we have a whole 2 hours of extravaganza here. We'll be seeing you all the week on Al Gore's interwebs as well as throwing a little bit of the videos and what we've talked about with Lady Elsa Jasmine. Elsa Jasmine Nightingale. I'm getting my tongue twisted as well. Folks, remember, keep it real, keep it distance, keep it love. And remember, you are loved. We're going to always wind up our last song of the show with someone from Barcelona. And so I'm going to give a mad shout out to my queen, and I love you, Lady Tori Sparks. This is actually one of her older singers from back in the day singles. This is Tall Towers. Folks, we'll see you in 6 days and 22 hours. Keep it real. Bye-bye.
Ha vuelto a suceder, me he acordado de ti, verte por la mañana, despertando junto a mí. Piensas en volver, aún piensas en mí. Por más que te cante, baby, ya no estoy para ti. Sabes quién soy, soy la perra que te jodió. Y tú el traidor, que esta canción no te confunda. Si todavía tienes dudas, anoche no me comí una fuerantas. Por más que juro que no volverás a hacerlo, segunda moto ya no me va a vender, no. Vacilando me espalda por un tiempo, siguen clavados los puñales de mi pecho. Cae en tu juego, y aún así te pienso. Cae en tu juego, y aún así te pienso. Sabes quién soy, soy la perra que te jodió. Y tú el traidor, que esta canción no te confunda. Si todavía tienes dudas, anoche no me comí una fuerantas. Está claro que otras flores regarás, pero de esta carita no te olvidarás jamás. Te conozco, sé que echas de menos clavarnos en la cama, a tocarnos luego. Está claro que otras flores regarás, pero como mi pussy en tu vida probarás. Te conozco, sé que echas de menos ponerme en cuatro y agarrarme fuerte del pelo. Sabes quién soy, soy la perra que te jodió. Y del cabrón, que esta canción no te confunda. Si todavía tienes dudas, anoche no me comí una fuerantas.